The basement of our house in Millbrook, Maine, had become my sanctuary. Not because it was particularly nice, just concrete walls, a beat-up couch, and a mini fridge full of beer, but because it was the only place Sophie didn't follow me anymore. I sat there on this particular Wednesday evening, nursing a Budweiser and listening to the floorboards creak overhead as my wife of 8 years paced around, talking on her phone in that hushed, excited tone she'd developed lately. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow," I heard her whisper through the thin ceiling. "David, you make me feel so alive." David. The name had been popping up in her conversations for months now, always followed by some bullshit explanation about yoga class or the new fitness studio downtown. Sophie thought I was an idiot, apparently. Maybe I had been for a while. I took another swig of beer and checked my phone. Gary Dunn, my old army buddy turned private investigator, had sent me a text. "Package delivered. Check your email." The photos were everything I'd expected and worse. Sophie and some pretty boy with perfect hair and expensive clothes holding hands at Murphy's Cafe on Main Street. Sophie kissing him outside the Riverside apartments. Sophie getting into his silver BMW, her hand on his thigh. 4 months. That's how long Gary had been tracking her, how long I'd suspected something was wrong. 4 months of working late at the studio, and girls' night out with Cassie, and "I'm just not feeling well tonight, honey." The front door slammed upstairs, followed by the click of Sophie's heels on the hardwood. She was home from another yoga session, no doubt. I climbed the stairs slowly, phone in my back pocket, evidence locked and loaded. Sophie was already in our bedroom when I got there, sitting on the edge of the bed we'd shared for 8 years, looking at me with those big brown eyes that used to make my heart skip. "We never talk anymore," she said, her voice carrying that hurt tone she'd perfected. I looked up from the book I'd been pretending to read. "We don't." "Why are you ignoring me?" She shifted closer, her hand reaching toward mine. "And why don't you want me anymore?" For a long moment, I just stared at her. Sophie was still beautiful at 34, still had that smile that could light up a room when she wanted to use it. But all I could see now was the lie behind it, the calculation in her eyes as she tried to figure out what I knew. I smiled calmly and set down my book. "I know what you did, Sophie." Her face changed instantly, color draining from her cheeks. "What do you mean?" "And I don't want you after your lover has had you." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her face flushed deep red, the kind of blush that comes from pure shame and panic. She stammered, "I don't have a lover." "Really?" "Yes, really." Her voice was defensive now, too quick, too high. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos Gary had sent, and showed her the screen. Sophie's eyes went wide as she saw herself in the pictures, holding hands with David, kissing him, looking happier than she'd looked with me in years. Her face went from red to white in seconds. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "Private investigator." She was panicking now, her hands shaking as she reached for the phone. "This isn't what it looks like." I scrolled to more photos. Sophie entering the apartment building with David, the timestamp showing 2 weeks ago, then last week, then 3 days ago. She stared at the screen in silence, her whole world crashing down around her. "Who is he?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer. "I asked you a question, Sophie. Who is he?" "David," she whispered. "From yoga class." I nodded. "Yoga class? How long?" She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. 4 months. 4 months. I let that sink in. "And you have the nerve to ask why I'm ignoring you." "It's over," she said desperately. "I ended it." "When?" "Last week." Convenient timing, right when I hired the investigator. Her eyes went wide. "How did you know?" "You started working out suddenly. New clothes, different perfume. You think I'm stupid?" "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." Sorry doesn't fix this, Sophie. What do you want? Divorce. No, please. I already filed the papers yesterday. You can't do this. Watch me. She was crying harder now, reaching for me. What about our marriage? What about it? You destroyed it with David. It was a mistake. Yes, it was. Your mistake. I love you. No, you don't. I do, I'll prove it. You can't prove what doesn't exist. She was desperate now, grabbing at my arm. I'll do anything. You should have thought about that 4 months ago. But you said, after my lover. Yes, after. As in, I'm done. The realization hit her like a truck. Her face went red again, this time with embarrassment and the crushing weight of what she'd lost. She tried to touch my hand, but I pulled away. Don't. Please, just talk to me. There's nothing to talk about. What about counseling? I have no interest in fixing what you broke. Where will I go? Ask David. We broke up. That's your problem. Her voice was breaking now. I made a mistake. Yes, you did. Now you get to live with it. I got up from the bed, and she grabbed my arm. Let go. Please don't leave me. You already left me for David. I walked out of the room, and she followed me, crying and begging. But I was done. 8 years of marriage, destroyed by 4 months of lies, and a pretty boy from yoga class. The next morning, Sophie was served with divorce papers at the fitness studio in front of all her clients. She tried calling me, tried coming home to reconcile, but I'd already moved on emotionally. I didn't want her anymore. Not after David, not after the lies. Her blushing that night had been guilt showing through, the visible shame of being caught. She'd asked why I was ignoring her, why I didn't want her anymore, and I'd given her the truth. I knew what she'd done, and I didn't want her after her lover had her. But that was just the beginning. Gary Dunn showed up at my workshop the next morning with a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. My old army buddy looked exactly the same as he had 15 years ago, lean, sharp-eyed, with the kind of quiet intensity that made people nervous. He'd been running his private investigation business out of Portland for the last decade, and he was damn good at it. Morning, Jack, he said, setting the folder on my workbench. Thought you might want to see the rest of what I dug up. I was sanding down a cabinet door for the Morrison kitchen renovation, trying to keep my hands busy while my marriage fell apart around me. How bad is it? Bad enough. Gary opened the folder and spread out photos, receipts, phone records, and printed emails. Your wife's been busy. The evidence was damning. Credit card receipts from expensive restaurants I'd never been to, hotel charges from the Riverside Inn, text messages between Sophie and David that made my stomach turn. Jesus, I muttered, reading over one particularly graphic exchange about what they wanted to do to each other. Gets worse, Gary said. I put a listening device in your kitchen yesterday while you were at work. Legal, since it's your house too. Want to hear what your wife and her friend Cassie talked about this morning? He pulled out a small digital recorder and hit play. Sophie's voice came through clearly. He knows everything, Cassie. Gary Dunn's been following me. That army asshole? Cassie North's nasal voice was unmistakable. What are you going to do? I don't know. Jack filed for divorce. He's going to take everything. No, he's not. You just need to play the victim. Tell everyone he's been abusive, controlling. Make him look like the bad guy. But I cheated on him. So? Men cheat all the time. You were emotionally neglected. You were seeking comfort. Make it his fault. I looked at Gary. They're going to try to destroy me. Probably. But we've got them on tape planning it. That's conspiracy to defame at minimum. My phone buzzed. Text from Sophie. Please come home. We need to talk. I can explain everything. I showed Gary the message. He grinned. What do you want to do? I want to make them understand what happens when you mess with Jack Harker. I like the sound of that. The first shot across the bow came that afternoon. I called the bank and froze all our joint accounts, then had Sophie's car repossessed while she was teaching her Tuesday evening yoga class. Mike Brennan, who ran the local tow service and owed me a favor from when I'd renovated his garage, was happy to help. "She's going to be pissed," Mike said as we watched the tow truck haul away Sophie's Honda Civic. "That's the point." My phone started ringing 20 minutes later. Sophie, stranded at the fitness studio with no way home and no money for a cab. "Jack, what did you do?" "Took back what's mine." "That's my car." "Actually, it's our car, and since you've been using it to drive to your boyfriend's place, I figured you didn't need it anymore." "You can't do this." "Already did. Have David pick you up." I hung up and turned off my phone. That evening at the Blue Lantern, the local watering hole where half of Millbrook came to drink and gossip, word was already spreading. Mrs. Whitby, our 70-year-old neighbor who knew everyone's business, cornered me at the bar. "Jack Harker, I've been meaning to talk to you," she said, settling onto the stool next to mine with her usual gin and tonic. "Evening, Mrs. Whitby. That man with the silver BMW has been at your place an awful lot lately, when you're at work." I took a sip of my beer. "Is that so? Handsome fellow, well-dressed, but I never did trust a man who spends that much time on his hair. What else have you seen?" Mrs. Whitby leaned in conspiratorially. "Well, I don't like to gossip, but your Sophie's been acting mighty strange, coming and going at all hours, wearing those tight yoga pants even when she's not exercising." "Anything else?" "Last Tuesday I saw her crying in her car in the driveway. Big, ugly sobs. Then that BMW man showed up and she got in his car. Didn't come back till after midnight." I nodded thoughtfully. Mrs. Whitby was the neighborhood watch committee all by herself. If she'd seen it, it had happened. "Thanks for keeping an eye out." "Course, dear. We look out for our own around here." Across the bar, I spotted Cassie North holding court with some of the yoga studio crowd. She was already working damage control, painting Sophie as the victim of an emotionally distant husband. "Poor Sophie," I heard her saying. "Jack's been so cold to her lately, barely speaks to her. I think she was just looking for someone to make her feel appreciated." I caught the bartender's attention. "Tommy, send around to Cassie's table. Tell them it's from me." Tommy raised an eyebrow, but did as I asked. When the drinks arrived, Cassie looked over at me with confusion. I raised my beer in a mock toast and smiled. She had no idea what was coming. My phone buzzed with another text from Sophie. "My credit card was declined at the grocery store. What did you do?" I typed back, "Canceled it. You want to eat David's food? Use David's money." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Jack, please, I'm sorry. Can we just talk?" "Nothing to talk about. You made your choice 4 months ago." "I chose wrong. I want to fix this." Too late. I finished my beer and headed home, leaving Cassie to wonder what I was planning. The truth was, I was just getting started. The next few days passed in a blur of careful planning and strategic strikes. Gary had given me enough ammunition to destroy Sophie and her lover 10 times over, but I wanted to be smart about it. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and I intended to let it freeze solid. David Clark, as it turned out, was everything I'd expected and worse. 38 years old, assistant manager at the new tech plant outside town, divorced with no kids. He drove a leased BMW, lived in a sterile condo development, and spent more money on hair products than most people spent on groceries. "Guy's a real piece of work," Gary reported after 2 days of surveillance. "Hits on anything in a skirt. Your wife's not his first affair, and she won't be his last." That information hit Sophie harder than I'd expected when I shared it with her during one of her increasingly desperate phone calls. "That's not true," she said, but her voice wavered. "Gary's got photos of him with at least 3 other women in the last month. You're just another conquest, Sophie." Silence on the other end. "But hey, I'm sure you're special." She hung up. The real fun started that Friday night. I waited until David's BMW was parked outside the Blue Lantern. He'd started coming around town, marking his territory like a dog, and paid him a little visit. I didn't slash his tires. That would have been criminal damage. Instead, I loosened the valve stems just enough that they'd go flat slowly over the course of a few hours. I also tucked a can of sardines up under his exhaust manifold where the heat would really bring out the aroma and left a note under his windshield wiper. Keep your hands off what's not yours. Then I went into the bar and ordered a beer. David came storming in 20 minutes later, face red with anger, waving my note around. "Who the hell did this?" he demanded. The bar went quiet. David clearly didn't understand small-town dynamics. You don't come into the Blue Lantern acting like you own the place, especially when half the customers know you've been screwing around with a married woman. "Problem, friend?" I asked from my stool at the bar. David's eyes locked onto mine. "You're Jack Harker." "That's right." "You need to control your wife." The entire bar erupted in laughter. Even Tommy the bartender was grinning as he polished glasses. "Control my wife?" I stood up slowly. David was taller than me, but I'd learned a long time ago that size wasn't everything. My wife's the one who needs controlling. She's been spreading her legs for you for 4 months. David's face went white. He hadn't expected me to be so direct. "Now," I continued, stepping closer, "you want to explain to me why you think you can come into my town, sleep with my wife, and then demand I control her? It's not like that. It's exactly like that." I was close enough now that he could smell the beer on my breath. "You're a predator who goes after married women because you can't get anyone single to put up with your bullshit. You don't know what you're talking about. I know Sophie's not your first affair. I know you've got at least 3 other side pieces right now. I know you lease that BMW because you can't actually afford to buy it. And I know that if you don't stay the hell away from my wife, next time it won't be your car that gets the treatment." David looked around the bar for support, but found only hostile faces staring back at him. Small towns don't like outsiders who come in and mess with the local families. "This isn't over," he said weakly. "Yeah, it is." He left without another word, and the bar erupted in cheers and applause. I bought a round for the house and sat back down to finish my beer. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "David said you threatened him." I typed back, "David's lucky I only threatened him." "This has to stop, Jack. We need to talk." "We tried talking. You chose David instead." "I made a mistake. I want to come home." Home is where people are honest with each other. You wouldn't recognize it. Saturday morning brought a new wrinkle. Gary called me at 7 a.m. with news. "Your boy David tried to pull some strings," he said. "Called in a favor with Bill Morrison over at the planning committee. Wanted Morrison to lean on you, maybe get your contractor's license pulled." Bill Morrison was the guy whose kitchen I was renovating. What did Bill say? "Told David to go screw himself. Apparently Morrison's been waiting 6 months for someone to fix his kitchen right, and he's not about to mess with the guy doing good work." "Anything else?" "Yeah, David's getting desperate. My source at the bank says he's been asking about taking out a loan against his condo. Word is he's planning to leave town, maybe take your wife with him." That was interesting. "Sophie doesn't know?" "Doesn't seem like it. She's been calling him constantly, but he's not picking up." I thought about that for a moment. David was cutting and running, leaving Sophie holding the bag. It was perfect. "Gary, I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "I want you to make sure Sophie finds out about David's exit strategy, but I want it to come from someone else." "I can arrange that." Sunday morning, Sophie showed up at the house while I was having coffee and reading the paper. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, wearing the same clothes she'd had on yesterday. "Jack, we need to talk." "I'm reading." "Please, 5 minutes." I looked up from the sports section. "You've got 3. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten breakfast together for 8 years, where we'd planned our future and talked about having kids someday. "David's leaving town," she said quietly. "Good for him. He wants me to go with him." "What did you tell him?" I said no. I want to fix our marriage. I folded the paper and looked at her directly. Sophie, our marriage ended 4 months ago when you started sleeping with David. Everything since then has just been paperwork. But I love you. You love the idea of me. You love the security, the house, the life we built. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you never would have cheated. I was confused. I felt neglected. So you decided to solve that problem by having an affair instead of talking to me about it. I tried to talk to you. When? When did you try? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. She couldn't think of a single example. That's what I thought. It's not too late, she said desperately. We can go to counseling. We can work this out. Sophie, I don't want to work it out. I don't want you anymore. You're damaged goods. The words hit her like a slap. She started crying again, those big, ugly sobs that used to make me want to comfort her. Now they just made me feel tired. Your 3 minutes are up, I said, going back to my paper. She sat there crying for another few minutes, then got up and left without another word. I finished reading about the Red Sox's latest losing streak and started planning my next move. The Millbrook Summer Festival was a big deal in our little town. Every year, the whole community came out for 3 days of food trucks, local bands, craft booths, and the kind of small-town socializing that made living in Maine worthwhile. This year, it was going to be even more memorable than usual. I'd been planning this for 2 weeks, ever since Gary had given me the final pieces of evidence I needed. Sophie and David thought they were being clever, but they had no idea how thoroughly I'd documented their affair. More importantly, they had no idea how many people in town were on my side. You sure about this, Jack? Mike Brennan asked as we set up the sound equipment behind the main stage. Mike had volunteered to help with the festival's technical needs, which gave us access to the PA system and the big screens they used for announcements. I'm sure. It's gonna be brutal. Good. They earned it. Jess Martinez, my right-hand woman on most construction jobs and a former firefighter who didn't take shit from anyone, was handling the video setup. Everything's ready to go, she said. You just give me the signal, and the whole festival's going to see what your wife's been up to. The festival kicked off Friday evening with Mayor Patterson's opening speech and the crowning of the Millbrook Lobster Queen, a tradition that dated back 50 years. Sophie was there, of course, working a booth for the yoga studio with Cassie. She kept looking around nervously, probably wondering what I was planning. David was there too, trying to blend in with the crowd, but standing out like a sore thumb in his expensive clothes and perfectly styled hair. He'd been avoiding the Blue Lantern since our confrontation, but he couldn't avoid the whole town. I waited until Saturday afternoon, when the festival was at its peak attendance. Families with kids, elderly couples, teenagers on dates, the whole cross-section of Millbrook society was there. Perfect. Gary had positioned himself near the yoga studio booth with a directional microphone, ready to capture whatever Sophie and Cassie said when the fireworks started. Mrs. Whitby was working the information booth, armed with printed copies of the most damning photos in case anyone wanted a closer look. At exactly 3 p.m., I walked up to the main stage where local band Broken Anchor was finishing their set. Excuse me, I said to the lead singer, a guy named Pete who'd graduated high school with me. Mind if I make an announcement? Sure thing, Jack. What's up? I took the microphone and looked out over the crowd of maybe 300 people. Sophie and Cassie were directly in my line of sight, about 50 feet away. Afternoon, everyone. Jack Harker here. Most of you know me. I've lived in Millbrook my whole life, served my country, came back home to build a business, and raise a family with my wife, Sophie. A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't the usual festival fare. But I wanted to take a moment to thank some special people who've been part of my life lately. First, I want to thank Gary Dunn, my old Army buddy, for his excellent private investigation services. Sophie's face went white. I also want to thank the Riverside Inn for providing such a comfortable place for my wife and her boyfriend to conduct their 4-month affair. The crowd erupted, People were pulling out phones, craning their necks to see Sophie, who was now trying to hide behind the yoga studio banner. And most of all, I want to thank David Clark, assistant manager over at the tech plant, for showing me exactly what kind of woman I married. David was pushing through the crowd, trying to get to the stage, but Mike and 3 other guys from the Blue Lantern blocked his path. Now, some of you might be thinking, Jack, that's personal business. Why are you airing your dirty laundry in public? I paused for effect. Well, when someone destroys your marriage and then tries to destroy your reputation around town, it stops being personal. It becomes everyone's business. I signaled to Jess, who fired up the video screens. The first image was Sophie and David kissing outside Murphy's Cafe. The crowd gasped. The second was them entering the Riverside Inn together. The third was Sophie getting into David's BMW while I was at work, her hand clearly visible on his thigh. These photos were taken over the last 4 months, I continued. While I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for our house, our cars, and my wife's yoga studio membership, she was working on her flexibility with David here. The crowd was eating it up. Some people were laughing. Others were shaking their heads in disgust, but everyone was riveted. Sophie was crying now, trying to push through the crowd to escape, but everywhere she turned, people were staring and pointing. Cassie was right behind her, looking like she wanted to disappear into the ground. Now, David's been telling people around town that he's going to take care of my wife, maybe even take her away from here, I said, pulling out a printed email that Gary had intercepted. But what Sophie doesn't know is that David's been planning to skip town all along, alone. I read from the email. Hey bro, this small town thing is getting old. Thinking about transferring back to Boston. The married chick is getting clingy anyway. Sophie stopped trying to run and stared at the stage in shock. David was shouting something from the crowd, but his voice was drowned out by the murmur of 300 people talking at once. So, Sophie, honey, I said, looking directly at her, looks like you're going to need a new plan. Maybe Cassie can help you figure it out since she's been coaching you on how to play the victim and make this whole thing my fault. I played the audio recording of Sophie and Cassie's conversation, their voices crystal clear over the festival speakers. He's been abusive, controlling, Cassie's voice said. Make him look like the bad guy. But I cheated on him, Sophie's voice replied. So? Men cheat all the time. Make it his fault. The crowd's mood shifted from entertained to angry. Nobody liked being manipulated, and hearing Sophie and Cassie plot to destroy my reputation didn't sit well with the good people of Millbrook. David finally broke free from the guys holding him back and charged the stage. He made it about halfway before tripping over a power cable and landing face first in the mud pit that the kids had been using for the pie-eating contest. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Someone started chanting, "Mud pig! Mud pig!" and soon half the festival had joined in. David struggled to his feet, covered in mud and humiliation, his perfect hair plastered to his head. He looked around at the crowd of people laughing at him, then at Sophie, who was staring at him with disgust and betrayal. "This isn't over, Harker," he shouted. "Yeah, it is," I replied calmly. "Security." 2 off-duty sheriff's deputies who were working festival security escorted David off the grounds while the crowd cheered. His BMW was in the parking lot, and I made sure everyone got a good look at it as they walked him out. Sophie was still standing near the yoga studio booth, surrounded by people who were no longer her friends. The studio's clients were walking away, shaking their heads. Cassie was trying to do damage control, but nobody was listening. I handed the microphone back to Pete and walked off the stage to thunderous applause. "Jack! Jack! Jack!" the crowd chanted. Mrs. Whitby appeared at my elbow with a huge smile. "That was better than cable television, dear." "Thanks, Mrs. Whitby. What happens now?" I looked over at Sophie, who was standing alone now, abandoned by David, abandoned by Cassie, abandoned by everyone who'd thought they were getting the real story. Now she gets to live with the consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Gary. David's packing his car. Looks like he's leaving tonight. I typed back, make sure Sophie knows. The festival continued around us, but the real entertainment was over. People were already posting videos on social media, and by tomorrow morning, the whole county would know what had happened. Sophie caught my eye across the crowd and started walking toward me. The people between us parted like the Red Sea, everyone eager to see what would happen next. "Jack," she said when she reached me, her voice barely audible over the festival noise. "Sophie, is it true? About David leaving? Ask him yourself. Oh, wait, you can't. He's not answering your calls." Her face crumpled. "Why did you do this? Why did you humiliate me in front of everyone?" "You humiliated yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. I'm your wife. Not for much longer." She looked around at the crowd of people staring at her, then back at me. "Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore." "Jack, please." "Sophie, you made your choice 4 months ago. You chose David over me, lies over truth, selfishness over our marriage. Now you get to live with that choice. But I love you." "No, you don't. You love what I provided. Security, stability, a nice house, a respectable life. But you threw all that away for a few hours of excitement with a guy who was just using you." The truth of it hit her like a physical blow. She staggered backward, tears streaming down her face. "This isn't over," she said, echoing David's words. "Yeah, it is." I walked away, leaving her standing there in the wreckage of her reputation, and headed home to pack her things. Sunday morning brought the kind of crisp, clear Maine weather that made you forget about all the world's problems. Unfortunately for Sophie and David, their problems were just beginning. Gary called me at 8 a.m. with an update. "David's gone. Packed up his condo last night and drove out of town around midnight. Left a forwarding address in Boston." "What about Sophie?" "She's been calling him nonstop. Phone goes straight to voicemail." I wasn't surprised. David had gotten what he wanted from Sophie, and when things got complicated, he'd cut and run like the coward he was. Now Sophie was learning the hard way that her knight in shining armor was really just a predator in an expensive suit. "There's something else," Gary continued. "Sophie tried to get into your joint safety deposit box yesterday afternoon. Bank wouldn't let her without both signatures." That was interesting. We kept about $10,000 in cash in that box, along with some important documents and my grandmother's jewelry. Sophie was probably desperate for money now that I'd cut off her access to our accounts. "She's getting desperate," I said. "Desperate people do stupid things. Let's make sure she does something really stupid." My plan for the final act was simple. Give Sophie enough rope to hang herself with, then sit back and watch her do it. I drove over to the house around noon, ostensibly to pick up some tools from the garage. Sophie's car was in the driveway. She'd managed to get it back from the impound lot somehow, and I could see her moving around inside through the kitchen window. I let myself in through the front door and called out, "Sophie, I'm here to get some things from the garage." She appeared in the kitchen doorway looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were red and puffy, and she was wearing the same yoga pants and t-shirt she'd had on at the festival. "Jack, thank God you're here. We need to talk." "Nothing to talk about. I'll be out of your way in 5 minutes." "Please, just listen to me. David's gone. He left me. You were right about everything." I stopped and looked at her. And I want to come home. I want to fix this." "Sophie, this isn't your home anymore. I'm selling the house." Her face went white. "You can't do that." "Actually, I can. It's in my name. You never contributed to the down payment or the mortgage. But I live here." "Not anymore. You've got 30 days to find somewhere else to go." "Where am I supposed to live? I don't have any money." "Should have thought of that before you decided to destroy our marriage." She was getting hysterical now, that high-pitched whine creeping into her voice. "Jack, please. I'm begging you. I'll do anything." There's nothing you can do. It's over. What if I told everyone the truth? What if I admitted I was wrong? Too late for that. You already tried to make me look like the bad guy, remember? I've got you on tape plotting with Cassie. Sophie's face twisted with rage. Fine. If you want to play hardball, I can play hardball too. What's that supposed to mean? I know things about you, Jack. Things that could ruin your business. I almost laughed. Like what? Like the Morrison job. I know you've been cutting corners, using substandard materials. One phone call to the building inspector, and you'll lose your license. Now I did laugh. Sophie, I've been doing the Morrison job by the book. Every permit, every inspection, every material receipt. Bill Morrison's got copies of everything. What about the Henderson renovation? You did that one under the table, no permits. The Henderson job was a bathroom remodel that didn't require permits. But thanks for showing me how desperate you are. She was grasping at straws now, throwing out wild accusations and hoping something would stick. It was pathetic. I'll tell everyone you hit me, she said finally. Go ahead. I've got security cameras in this house that show every conversation we've had since I found out about your affair, including this one. She looked around wildly and spotted the small cameras I'd had Gary install in the living room and kitchen. You've been recording me? In my own house? You bet. That's illegal. No, it's not. Maine's a one-party consent state, and I'm a party to every conversation. Sophie slumped against the kitchen counter, defeated. What do you want from me? I want you to disappear. I want you to pack your things, find somewhere else to live, and stay out of my life. And if I don't? Then things get a lot worse for you. Worse how? I pulled out my phone and showed her a video Gary had taken the night before. It showed Sophie trying to break into David's condo, rattling the door handle and peering through windows. Attempted breaking and entering. Plus, I've got evidence of you stalking David. 37 phone calls in one day. That's harassment. You bastard. I'm the bastard? You cheated on me for 4 months, lied to my face every day, tried to turn the whole town against me, and threatened to file false police reports. But I'm the bastard. She was crying again, but this time it felt different. Not the manipulative tears she'd been using to try to get sympathy, but real tears of genuine despair. I screwed up, she whispered. I skewed up so bad. Yes, you did. Is there any way? No. You won't even consider. Sophie, look at me. She looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. I don't love you anymore. I don't even like you. You're a stranger to me now, and not a very nice one. The woman I married died 4 months ago when you decided David was more important than our marriage. But I chose you. I chose you over him. You chose me because he dumped you. That's not the same thing. The truth of that statement hit her like a sledgehammer. She doubled over, sobbing, finally understanding that she'd lost everything and had no one to blame but herself. I walked past her to the garage, grabbed the tools I needed, and headed for the door. Jack, wait. I turned around one last time. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix anything. What am I supposed to do now? Learn to live with the consequences of your choices. I walked out of the house and drove away, leaving Sophie alone with the wreckage of her life. That afternoon, Gary called with one final update. Sophie's moving out, he said. Saw her loading boxes into her car about an hour ago. Where's she going? Cassie's place, looks like, though I hear that's not going to last long either. Why not? Cassie's husband found out about her role in covering up the affair. He's filing for divorce, too. I had to smile at that. Cassie had been so busy helping Sophie destroy her marriage that she'd forgotten to protect her own. So where does that leave Sophie? Alone, broke, and unemployed. The yoga studio fired her after the festival. Apparently half their clients canceled their memberships. Good. Jack, can I ask you something? Shoot. Do you feel bad about any of this? I thought about that for a moment. Did I feel bad about destroying Sophie's life? About humiliating her in front of the whole town? About leaving her with nothing? No, I said finally. I don't feel bad at all. Why not? Because she earned every bit of it. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with them. That evening, I sat in my basement man cave with a beer and thought about the last week. 8 years of marriage, destroyed by 4 months of lies. A woman I'd loved more than life itself, revealed to be someone I didn't even recognize. But I wasn't sad anymore. I was free. My phone buzzed with one last text from Sophie. I hope you're happy. I typed back, I will be. And for the first time in months, I meant it. Monday morning brought unexpected visitors. I was having coffee and reading the newspaper when I heard cars pulling into my driveway. Through the kitchen window, I saw Sophie getting out of a beat-up Honda Civic I didn't recognize, followed by Cassie and 2 guys I'd never seen before. This was interesting. I opened the front door before they could knock. Sophie looked terrible, worse than she had yesterday, if that was possible. Her eyes were wild, desperate, and she was clutching a manila folder against her chest like it was a life preserver. Jack, we need to talk, she said. I thought we covered everything yesterday. Things have changed. I looked at the 2 guys with her. They were big, rough-looking, the kind of men you hired when you needed something done and didn't care about the details. Who are your friends? This is Tony and Steve, Cassie said, speaking for the first time. They're here to help us negotiate. I almost laughed. Negotiate what? Sophie held up the folder. I found something. Something that's going to change everything. What kind of something? Documents, financial records, proof that you've been hiding money from me. Now I was curious. Show me. Sophie opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Bank statements, investment records, property deeds, all legitimate documents, but not what she thought they were. You've got a secret account with $50,000 in it, she said triumphantly. And you own property in New Hampshire that you never told me about. I looked through the papers, recognizing them immediately. Sophie, this is my inheritance from my grandfather. I got it 2 years before we met. That's not what these documents say. Actually, it is exactly what they say. If you knew how to read financial documents, you'd see the dates. Her face fell. But Cassie said, Cassie doesn't know shit about finance. Tony, the larger of the 2 men, stepped forward. Look, pal, we can do this easy or we can do it hard. Your wife wants her fair share and she's going to get it. I looked at him calmly. And you are? I'm the guy who makes sure things get settled fairly. I see. And what exactly are you planning to do? Whatever it takes. I nodded thoughtfully, then pulled out my phone and hit a speed dial number. Gary, yeah, it's Jack. I've got some visitors who are threatening me. Can you come over? Tony grabbed for my phone, but I stepped back. Oh, and Gary, bring Mike and the crew, and maybe call Sheriff Patterson. Tell him we've got some out-of-town muscle trying to shake down a local contractor. Tony's face went white. Small-town intimidation was one thing, but bringing law enforcement into it was another. You're bluffing, Cassie said. Am I? Gary Dunn, private investigator, Mike Brennan, tow truck operator and former Marine, Jess Martinez, former firefighter and current badass, plus Sheriff Patterson, who's been looking for an excuse to arrest some out-of-town troublemakers. I could hear cars pulling up outside, Gary's pickup truck followed by Mike's tow truck and Jess's Jeep. Looks like the cavalry's here, I said. Tony and Steve were already backing toward their car. This isn't over, Tony said. Yeah, it is. Gary walked through the front door without knocking, followed by Mike and Jess. All 3 of them were armed and looked ready for trouble. Problem, Jack? Gary asked. These folks were just leaving. Tony and Steve practically ran to their car. Cassie was right behind them, but Sophie stood her ground. This isn't fair, she screamed. You're stealing from me. Sophie, I'm not stealing anything. We're getting divorced. You get half of what we accumulated during the marriage. That's the law. But you have all this money that I inherited before I met you. It's not community property. I deserve something. You deserve exactly what you're getting. Nothing. Gary stepped forward. Ma'am, I think it's time for you to go. Sophie looked around at the four of us, realized she was outnumbered, and finally started walking toward the car. This isn't over, she yelled as they drove away. Yeah, it is, I called back. Mike was grinning. Man, she's really lost it. Desperation makes people stupid, Gary said. What was that about? Jess asked. I showed them the document Sophie had brought. She thought she'd found evidence of hidden assets. Turns out she can't read a bank statement. So what's the real story with these? Gary asked, flipping through the papers. My grandfather left me some money and a cabin in New Hampshire when he died. I got it 2 years before I met Sophie, so it's not community property. But she's too dumb to understand that. How did she get these documents? Good question. Gary studied the papers more carefully. These are copies, and they're recent copies, printed last week. Meaning someone gave them to her, someone with access to your personal financial information. I thought about that. Who would have access? Your lawyer, your accountant, your bank, or someone who broke into my house? We all looked at each other. Gary, I need you to check something for me. What? I want to know if anyone's been in this house when I wasn't here. 20 minutes later, Gary had his answer. The security cameras I'd installed showed Sophie letting herself in 3 days ago while I was at work. She'd gone straight to my home office and spent 2 hours going through my files. She made copies of everything, Gary said, watching the footage. Bank statements, investment records, insurance policies, the works. That's breaking and entering. Technically, she still lives here, so it's not breaking and entering, but it is theft of personal documents. Can we use this? Oh yeah, this is going to make the divorce very interesting. That afternoon, I drove over to my lawyer's office with the security footage and the documents Sophie had tried to use against me. Janet Morrison, Bill's wife and the best divorce attorney in 3 counties, watched the video with interest. She really is her own worst enemy, Janet said. What does this mean for the divorce? It means she just destroyed any claim she might have had to spousal support. Breaking into your personal files, hiring muscle to intimidate you, making false claims about hidden assets, that's all evidence of bad faith. So she gets nothing? She gets nothing. Good. Janet smiled. Jack, I have to ask, did you plan all this? Plan what? The way everything's played out. The festival, the evidence, Sophie's increasingly desperate behavior. It's all worked out very well for you. I thought about that. Had I planned it? Or had I just given Sophie enough rope to hang herself with? I didn't plan anything, I said finally. I just documented what happened and let the truth speak for itself. And the truth is? The truth is that Sophie destroyed our marriage, tried to destroy my reputation, and when that didn't work, tried to steal from me. Everything that's happened to her since then is just the natural consequence of her choices. Janet nodded. Well, whatever you did or didn't plan, it worked. The divorce will be final next week and she won't get a penny. That evening, I was back in my basement with a beer when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Jack, it's Sophie. What do you want? I wanted to apologize. For today, for everything. I know I've been acting crazy. Yes, you have. I'm desperate, Jack. I don't have anywhere to go, no money, no job. David's gone, Cassie's husband kicked her out, and now she's blaming me for ruining her marriage too. That's not my problem. I know it's not. But I was hoping maybe we could work something out. Like what? Maybe I could stay in the house for a few more weeks? Just until I figure out what to do? No. Please, Jack, I'm begging you. Sophie, you hired muscle to threaten me today. You broke into my house and stole my personal documents. You've spent the last week trying to destroy me. And now you want me to help you? I was desperate. You were greedy. There's a difference. What am I supposed to do? I don't know, and I don't care. Jack, please. I hung up. 5 minutes later, she called back. Jack, don't hang up. I have something you want. I doubt that. I have information about David, about what he's been doing. I don't care about David. He's been embezzling money from the tech plant, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I have proof. That was interesting, but not surprising. So if you help me, I'll give you the evidence. You can turn him in, get him arrested. Sophie, David's already gone. He's not my problem anymore. But you could get revenge on him. I don't need revenge on David. He's a pathetic loser who's going to spend the rest of his life running from one failed relationship to another. That's punishment enough. But the money is not my concern. Jack, please, I'm offering you everything I have. You don't have anything I want. I have myself. I'll do anything you want, be anything you want. The desperation in her voice was almost painful to hear. Almost. Sophie, I don't want you. I told you that already. Why not? Why won't you even consider it? Because you're not the woman I married. You're not even the woman I thought I knew. You're just someone who looks like my wife but acts like a stranger. I can change. No, you can't. This is who you really are. The affair, the lies, the manipulation, the threats. This is the real Sophie. The woman I married was just an act. Silence on the other end. Sophie, I'm here. This is the last time we're going to talk. The divorce will be final next week. After that, I don't want to see you, hear from you, or know anything about your life. We're done. Jack, we're done. I hung up and turned off my phone. Wednesday morning, Gary called with the final update. Sophie's gone, he said. Packed up what was left of her stuff and drove out of town around midnight. Where'd she go? Don't know, don't care, but she's not coming back. What about Cassie? Cassie's moving to Portland. Her husband's keeping the house and the kids. And David? Still in Boston as far as I know. Though I heard through the grapevine that the tech plant's been asking questions about some missing money. I smiled at that. Sophie's information about David embezzling had been accurate, apparently. But that was his problem now. So it's over. It's over. That afternoon I drove through downtown Millbrook for the first time since the festival. People waved and called out greetings, treating me like some kind of local hero. At the Blue Lantern, Tommy the bartender had put up a sign, "Home of Jack Harker, champion of truth and justice." "You're famous," Mrs. Whitby told me when I stopped by her house to fix a leaky faucet. My granddaughter in California saw the video from the festival on Facebook. She said you're an inspiration to wronged husbands everywhere. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can do. Friday morning, Janet Morrison called with the news I'd been waiting for. "It's official," she said. "The divorce is final. Sophie gets nothing, you keep everything, and she's legally prohibited from contacting you. What if she violates the restraining order? Then she goes to jail." "Good. Jack, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you feel like you got justice?" I thought about that question for a long time. Did I feel like I'd gotten justice? Sophie had lost everything: her marriage, her home, her friends, her reputation, her future. She was alone, broke, and facing a lifetime of consequences for 4 months of bad decisions. David had lost his job, his reputation, and was probably going to face embezzlement charges. He'd gone from being a big shot to being a fugitive in less than a week. Cassie had lost her marriage, her business, and her best friend. She was starting over at 40 with nothing but regret and bitterness. And me? I was free. Free of lies, free of betrayal, free of people who didn't deserve my loyalty or my love. "Yeah," I said finally. "I feel like I got justice." That night I sat in my basement with a beer and thought about everything that had happened. 8 years of marriage, destroyed by 4 months of lies. But maybe that was for the best. Maybe Sophie had done me a favor by showing me who she really was before I wasted any more years on her. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy now." I knew it was Sophie, probably using a burner phone or borrowing someone else's. I typed back, "I am." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again, then disappeared for good. I finished my beer, turned off the lights, and went upstairs to bed. Tomorrow was Saturday, and I had a kitchen to finish for Bill Morrison. Life was good. The woman who had asked me why I was ignoring her, why I didn't want her anymore, was gone forever. The woman who had blushed deep red when I told her I knew what she'd done, that I didn't want her after her lover had her, was nothing but a memory now. And I was exactly where I wanted to be. Free, vindicated, and ready to start over. Sophie had asked me why I was ignoring her and not wanting her. I had smiled and told her I knew what she'd done, that I didn't want her after her lover. She had blushed with shame and guilt, knowing she'd been caught. Now she was gone and I was free.